Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stober. Today we beam the searchlight on the National Assembly's proposed funding of the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC 2019 election budget from the Social Investment Program. Now, this has generated heated debates. Some have expressed reservations about deducting the approved 242 billion naira for the elections from the Social Investment Fund. Now, some developmentalists say the action is anti-masses and will slow down the gains of the social investment-driven programs and projects. But others have wondered why the National Assembly is not sourcing part of the said funds from its constituency allowances. INEC's budget for the 2019 elections and matters arising, that's the focus tonight. But first, let's get to see this report by Ignatius Nkwo.
On the 17th of July 2018, President Muhammadu Buhari sent request for viament and supplementary budget 2018 to the National Assembly for consideration 1 week before the National Assembly embarked on its 2018 annual recess. In the letter dated 11 July 2018, Mr. President requested for the kind consideration of the National Assembly for a viament under the 2018 Appropriation Act. Part of this request was for the funding of the request made by the Independent National Electoral Commission and security agencies for the conduct of the 2019 general elections, amounting to 242.4 billion naira. Of that amount, the President requested that 164.1 billion be accommodated in the 2018 budget by way of viament within the 2018 Appropriation Act, while the balance of the 78.3 billion should be considered by the National Assembly as part of the 2019 budget. The President asked the National Assembly to that is, reallocate the sum of 228 billion naira from 578 billion naira for 403 projects inserted into the 2018 budget by the National Assembly.
I invite the Distinguished Senate to consider, in the national interest, relocating some of the funds appropriated for the new projects which were inserted into the 2018 budget proposal to cover the sum of 228 billion 854 million 8,205 naira required as noted above.
After several meetings involving the National Assembly Joint Committee on INEC and the chairman of INEC as well as Minister of Budget and National Planning, the Joint Committee submitted its report to the Senate Committee on Appropriation, which now made its adjustments and recommendations to the Senate at plenary. Senate considered and approved the recommendations of its Committee on Appropriations, which recommended that the Senate do approve the sum of 189 billion for the funding of the 219 polls, while 45.5 billion be provided for INEC as its statutory transfers. That the 189 billion election funds should be vied from both recurrent and capital components of the Special Intervention Program captured in the service-wide vote of the 2018 budget, against the request of Mr. President that the money be vied from the 578 billion inserted by the legislators. The 53 billion security budget is to be vied from the Special Intervention Fund, just like the 189 billion for the Independent National Electoral Commission.
To me, as a chairman of the committee, I'm seeing what is going on, how masses are enjoying this program. I didn't support the idea of taking that money from. Maybe there are other sources that we can take small from other sources, but not completely from that amount, that allocation.
It may be safe to assume that they decided to protect areas where they will get a kickback or money, allegedly, as against a social intervention program that will directly touch on the Nigerian people and especially the less privileged.
The implication of this is that out of the 500 billion appropriated for the Special Intervention Fund in the 2018 budget, 242.2 billion will be removed from the fund, leaving it with a balance of 257.7 billion.
But now a lot of money is reduced, so sometimes maybe some of the program aspect of the program need to be stopped because of this amount taken from the money.
If you take away social intervention, you actually have taken 80% of all of President Buhari's promises to the Nigerian people.
The social intervention program, which commenced in 2016, includes homegrown school feeding, government economic empowerment, Nigeria Power job creation, and conditional cash transfers. Ignatius Nkwo, NTA News.
That report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's introduce our guests. We'd like to welcome to this program Senator Ita Enang, who is Senior Special Assistant to the President on National Assembly Matters, Senate. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
We're also joined by Dr. Chima Amadi, Executive Director, Independent Service Delivery Monitoring Group. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me, sir.
Let me also welcome tonight Jide Ojo, who is a political analyst. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Good evening, Nigerians.
All right, as we always say on Tuesdays, at the appropriate time, you can be part of this discussion. The various platforms will be on your screen. We advise you take advantage of them. And for those who will be phoning in tonight, as usual, we always say to you, when your call gets through to the studio, turn down the volume of your TV set, reduce the volume. And the best way to know that your call has been passed through is you'll see your name on screen. Once your name has been put on screen, it means that your call is through to the studio, and just go right ahead with your question or comment. Don't waste too much time on greetings. Just go straight to the point. Okay, make your comment, ask a question, just contribute what you have to say. And whatever issues you raise, our guest tonight will take on those issues. So once again, welcome to Tuesday Live. Let's start off from the very beginning. Now, the budget for INEC.
Yeah.
A lot of Nigerians were on edge when it seemed that so many things were happening in the polity, especially between the executive and the legislature, and they felt this would not go through. There was going to be, finally, well, how did it go?
Yeah, the what did they think they will not go through the budget?
Well, that there might not be time given.
Okay.
You know the build-up, the face-off that was a build-up to all this.
Yeah. Let me thank Nigerians for the level of activism that they expressed in the course of the matters. And let me also thank the National Assembly for the sensitivity, for their sensitivity to sensibilities of Nigerians, because when Nigerians speak, they go back and listen. And even if they seem to have been near to a decision which Nigerian or public opinion doesn't seem to favor, the National Assembly goes back to re-examine those questions. Now, there was this heat when the National Assembly was on vacation, and Mr. President submitted the request that that has to be passed because the INEC budget will have to be passed because the election was near. And the National Assembly was on vacation. So what the National Assembly did was to show good faith by asking its Committee on Independent National Electoral Commission to come back and consider the budget. But we raised the question that, look, all this budget, if the independent, if the INEC committee alone considers the budget, there is the security component, which relates to the police, Office of the National Security Advisor, the SSS, the civil defense, and other security agencies. And if those committees are not if those committees are not sitting to consider, then I think it may not just be. It may just not look as if it can be passed. And of course, that is when we now pleaded with the National Assembly to reconvene to consider the budget. And it couldn't reconvene because of other matters they had to handle. So, but they promised that immediately they come back, they will reconvene. So as they came back, they read Mr. President's communication, they committed it to the appropriate committees, and all the committees started working. And I think they have worked. I think it's better to stop here until your another question comes.
Oh, well, okay, good. But we'll ask Dr. Chima Amadi what his impressions are about the build-up to the consideration and the passing of the budget in the long run. I mean, so many Nigerians have said, should we go through, should this cycle, should we have gone through all that?
An irresponsible husband is that husband that tells you that the wife gave birth and that he wasn't prepared, that it just happened. It didn't just happen. It didn't just happen. On the first day when you went to do a test and you said, congratulations, your wife is pregnant, you should know that it is a 9-month journey and that somebody must give birth. The moment the 2015 election was over, we knew the next election was going to be in 2019. And it is preposterous to think that just 117 days to the election, to the 2019 election, we're still going back and forth over budgets. Don't forget that this budget started as far back as 8 months ago, if I'm not mistaken, last year. And I want to commend the president and the leadership of INEC that for the first time, the initiative was taken, a decision was taken to say election budget was not going to be a secret court affair anymore, where the INEC writes what he wants to write, the SSS and other security agencies put together, they send to Mr. President, who takes his discretion to release money. No, that was one innovation. We must commend the president, the leadership of INEC, and of course the National Assembly. For the first time, the budget was drawn, commuted to the president, and the president presented it to the National Assembly as an executive bill. So it allowed Nigerians to see the whole gamut of what the expenditure was going to be. And that is why Nigerians are interested, because we now know what you spend A, B, C, the line-by-line budgets, and that was why our representative decided to look at it. Now, there is a discrepancy. Where will this money come from? Is it going to come from, of course it's going to be VIAT. The president is asking that the VIAT comes from the new insertions by the National Assembly for what they call the constituency projects. While the National Assembly said, hold on a bit, get this money from a component of your budget. That is the subsidy, social investment intervention projects. Now, both heads, some sort of heads, are meant for Nigerians. The social investment projects is for Nigerians. The constituency project itself is also for Nigerians. So, but who will blame first? The National Assembly is insisting that you cannot take out a critical component of what will make us come to our people to ask for re-election, to take it off the table for us. And like one of your analysts said, the SIP projects of the president is also a critical component of what he wants to approach the Nigerian people to say, this I have done. About 80% of his campaign promises, whether you talk about the conditional cash transfer, whether you talk about the school feeding program, and other things that are under there. So I think that at some point, both parties need to sit down together, and the national interest would have to come into play. And it's not a negotiation. It's not one party does not win a negotiation. It has to be. You have to leave the negotiation to feeling happy about negotiation. But where we are right now, it's not a good position, because now everything that is on the INEC budget is, especially the sensitive materials, are time-bound. These things have to be sought from outside the country. Don't forget that you have to bring them, you have to place order, you have to bring them, and then we don't want a situation where even the fluctuations in the foreign exchange market affects budgeting, such that the money may not even be enough again to even do what has to be done. I think both parties need to sit down at this point in time, and I'm very happy that Senator Tenang, who is a product of both sides, should be capable enough to bring them together, sit down, and take a decision in the national interest.
Right, let's come to you. Taking it from Chima Amadi, we knew there would be elections in 2019. Did it have to come to just this, someone says, 11th hour?
Very unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. I'm beginning to sound like a broken record about the very sad commentary that we have turned our elections into. Let's even discountenance the fact that we know we are going to have elections every 4 years. INEC gave the dates for elections, for 2019 elections, on March 9, 2017. March 9, 2017. 2 years ahead, saying that 2019 election will be on February 16th and March 2nd, 2019. That was announced, those dates were announced on March 9, 2017. Now, INEC went further on January 9, 2018 to release the timetable and schedule of activities. And there are 14 items on those activities. You agree with me, you've seen quite a number of those happening, the last being the party primaries and the nomination process we currently are undergoing. So, how did it escape the INEC or the presidency not to have included, even if it's an estimate, of the budget for 2019 election in the 2018 appropriation bill, which was submitted on November 7, 2017. I recall that as early as April this year, a national commissioner in INEC has been shouting that we do not have funds for 2019 elections. Now, if the needful had been done as at when it should have been, we will not find ourselves in this coup d'etat where we are now debating environment. Environment means, because the president, I read what he sent to the National Assembly through the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Senate. He said 9.12 trillion budget is already too big to implement. He does not want to send a supplementary budget. Peradventure, if that 242 billion had been captured, the National Assembly would not have seen the reason to increase their own constituency project from the 100 billion that they negotiated with the presidency to 500 billion plus. Everybody will have looked at it in overall national interest to say, I mean, let's manage this. We can't have a too big, because we know that even the 9.12 trillion was going to be funded partly from borrowing. And we saw the borrowing plan that the National Assembly just approved last Thursday and today, by House of Reps, to say that the president can go and borrow 2.9 trillion to fund the 2018 budget. Now, if we have done the needful, let's assume that, okay, as at the time the budget for 2018 was even being prepared, we were not too sure of the 100% too sure of the actual estimate. We can extrapolate. How much did we spend during the last electioneering preparation? What is the inflation? Because budget is also an estimate. Whether we are talking of 189 billion or 143 billion that the president said in his correspondence, it's still an estimate. I've seen in the past where under Professor Atairu Jega, INEC returned money to Treasury, unspent fund. That was the balance of, I don't know whether it's 2011 election or something. About a couple of billion was returned to Treasury because it was. So what I'm saying in essence is that now the controversy, today marks 115 days, 115 days to 2019 elections. 115. We are talking of less than 4 months. And like my colleague here said, there are sensitive materials that INEC will need that are not to be found on the shelf. And INEC is not immune from going through the Bureau of Public Procurement certifications. So before you can award contracts, you must have gotten due certification from BP, Bureau of Public Procurement, BPP, to say yes, okay, this estimate is appropriate, is value, it will give value for money and all of that. Where is the time to do that? So what we will now, what will likely happen when all of this is finally laid to rest is we may have a short-circuited procurement process where so many things will be waived on the ground of exigencies to make us meet the date for the elections.
All right, well, you've been trying to interject there to say, well, he has painted a picture here. What were the areas of this? What, can we call it disagreement or not seeing things from the same side?
Well, let me say that first, that there was the budget of 2018 that was passed, and the budget of 2018 had statutory transferred money for INEC, just as it had statutory transferred money for National Assembly, Judiciary, and so on. So there was money meant for INEC.
I know 45 billion, but now, it was meant for running costs.
As at that time, the
didn't take
budget
into
for the elections were not.
That's exactly what I'm alluding to.
Ready. Now, the budget for elections will be ready when you know the act, the law that you are going to work on. And, you know, it is the law, if the law will involve you in the in the primaries process of the political parties. It is how many political parties do you have? It is to what extent will you involve the security agencies? How many, what are the logistics? It will depend on the law. But since the law was not passed, and it was not possible to say that this is what is likely to be the cost implications, because you will determine the cost when you determine all the things that you will have to do. Now, when INEC had at least a draft of the law, an idea of what it was, although it was not passed until now, it has not become law, then it was then able to draw its budget. And by the time it drew its budget, the budget had left the National Assembly and gone to Mr. President. And Mr. President considered, look, if I have to wait for everything that to be in this budget to be in this budget, then we will not start the implementation of 2018 budget, and we will not take advantage of the dry season, and will not take advantage of the time for borrowing. Mr. President also had reservations, which we've discussed many times, that even on many matters, but he said, I will assent to this budget. I will send amendments to the budget and perhaps environment. Then when INEC brought its budget, first the president had to send amendment of certain of the sections, and president had to send a letter requesting money, environment, to fund the Independent National Electoral Commission. And since we had a budget of 9 something trillion, Mr. President said, look, I do not want to increase the size of the budget. So I am not sending a supplementary budget because I do not have any extra source that I will generate money. And the borrowing that we want to do to fund this budget, we have already almost exceeded. We've gone very far on our limits of domestic borrowing, and we're almost at the zenith of our external borrowing, particularly from the Eurobond window. So, buy money from some of the heads on project that you inserted, which I assented, but buy money from that head to fund this budget. Now, the National Assembly came and looked at the all the heads they have, and they thought in their first consideration that it would be better to take money from the service-wide vote and take money from the social investment programs, that is the school feeding programs, government enterprise empowerment program, the market money, and so on. And when we saw that, we had to intervene, because as liaison, I feel the pulse of the executive. I feel the feelings of the legislature. And I try to find out what would be the best that can happen to make sure that the measure is passed without injuring the sensitivities of Nigerians. Now, I approached the legislature. By the grace of God, His Excellency the President of the Senate and His Excellency the Speaker of the House of Representatives, where we had a meeting between the Senate President, the Speaker, and myself, and I presented some issues which I wouldn't want to go into details here because it was confidential. It was privileged communication between three of us, and we agreed that to have a situation where the executive is comfortable and the legislatures are not edged, that we should set up a committee to be headed by the Deputy Speaker. That is the Deputy Speaker, the Senate leader, the House leader, and we came with the executive. I convened a meeting, that is the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Minister of Finance, myself, the Director General Budget Office of the Federation, and the Director General Debt Management Office. We had that meeting at the instance of the leadership of the National Assembly. We had that meeting, I think, Thursday last week. And we agreed that both parties should go back. We agreed basically that the executive, Mr. President and the executive, was not comfortable at the sources of wanting to fund that INEC budget. Because one, if you take money from the social intervention, that you are taking money from the real aggrieved Nigerian, from the one that every person should try to protect. I watched the program, I watched the intro here, and I was excited when I saw a child that you don't know happily eating food from the house, from the school feeding program, and you see the enthusiasm with which children now go to school, you know. So we thought that, look, that program was not such as could be tampered with. And then the market money, then the enterprise scheme and all that. And, well, there was this argument that in the first 1 or 2 years, much of the money had not been accessed. So it was only 50 to 60% of the money that was used. But we gave excuse that that was the beginning of the program. That's number one. Number two, many schools and many states were not enrolled on the program. Number three, when we had the budget, we were not sure, we were not able to have a full release of that money. So it's not that there was no capacity to use. And this is a year when everybody, every state now wants to latch onto the program, that we should have an agreement different from this. And we also said that, look, there were Mr. President's requests, which covered INEC, Office of the National Security Advisor, the police, the army weren't involved, and a few other of the armed services. And in the course of hearing, the committees decided that there is always in election the Air Force, the armed air component. There is always sometimes the naval component, which is involved in the riverine areas. And so that all this will have to be covered by the budget. So we now had a meeting and we said, okay, let us go back and every side look at the situation so that all the executive and the legislature will be on one page. Because what we're trying to avoid was a situation where the budget is passed and it leads to some disputations between the executive and the legislature. So I had to, as liaison, intervene in advance to make sure that we met each other halfway. But by the grace of God, I will not give the details because we had a meeting yesterday at the behest of the President of the Senate and the Speaker. And we agreed on basic things after about 4 hours meeting. Of about 4 to 5 hours meeting on Monday. So we agreed on basic sources and ingenious ways of funding the budget without injuring the other very critical projects of the federal government. And also, we also agreed that the legislature said, look, all the information they needed about passing the Eurobond request was also available and all the questions were answered. So they agreed that the Senate passed, the House would pass because every information were needed and done. So as of today, I believe that, as of today, I know that the positions that we agreed or the understandings we had, understanding, not agreements, are being communicated, marketed, and softly sold to the distinguished senators and honorable members, and we are arriving at an agreement which I will not, and that agreement will be what the National Assembly will pass. I want to assure Nigerians that the National Assembly is very, very ready and is working and continue to work in tandem with the executive. And that they are saying, look, we passed the budget because we have Nigerians in mind. And they are saying, we the project we had as a constituency project, or those ones that were in the budget, are also to be executed within the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So whatever we'll do and however we'll do, which we've had an understanding, will not be injurious to Nigerians. And we have arrived at that. And by the time the National Assembly passes, I think both sides will be happy. But I cannot disclose what were the terms and the basics.
Well, while you keep fine-tuning this understanding that hopefully should lead to agreements, the clock keeps ticking, right?
Yes, it does.
Let me just clear that our understanding, which we had some hours or some few, about some 28, 24 hours ago or something, is to be implemented in the now, because it does appear that from the schedule of the National Assembly, they will soon proceed on oversight, from not vacation, but oversight, because having released money, you have to go and see the extent to which it was done. The meeting yesterday had the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, the whole principal officers of the Senate, and so on presiding, and our side was led by the Minister of Finance, Minister of Budget and National Planning, Finance, myself, and the Director General Budget Office of the Federation. So we considered all the issues, including time. And time is of the essence, and in the next very few hours, the National Assembly would come up with what they have, with the blessings they have given to the request of Mr. President.
Well, as we said, the clock is ticking, and is there a guarantee that an agreement, which you describe as
understanding?
Oh, no. Deriving from the understanding.
Yes.
Is there a guarantee that an agreement will, after this understanding, an agreement that will not be, as you put it, injurious to either side?
It will not be injurious to. All right. It will be fair to both sides.
Look, the truth is, and let's be very frank with ourselves, that we're in this cul-de-sac that we find ourselves because of the executive. Look, it's easy to sit down here and say the National Assembly is protecting its interests as represented in the constituency projects, and the executive is also, protecting its interests as represented in the social intervention programs. But the first question to ask is, when did the president get the communication, the official communication from INEC with regards to his budget? 10 months ago.
That's not correct.
No, please.
That's not correct.
Please.
When was it?
Let's put this into context. We're talking about the communication from INEC to say this is what we are planning to do. The INEC chairman, from what we have gathered, defended this 3 times before the executive, a different forum, before everything was perfected, and then that document waited for how many months with the presidency? It didn't, the difference, the back and forth between the INEC offices and the executive, it wasn't complete, and the president communicated immediately. The members of the National Assembly are insisting that they started treating this budget as soon as the official communication from the president got to them. Now, this communication got to them when? It was caught up. The treatment of the budget was caught up in the unnecessary controversy that led to their proceeding to what do you call it, to recess.
Okay, we'll ask you to pause there, and then we'll come back and pick up from there. But let's go to the phones. We have Shaba, who's our first caller. Well, we can't get that call through. All right, we'll see what happens. So just go ahead. Because,
my point is this: that the document spent so much time with the executive. Now, if this thing had moved to the National Assembly, perhaps this back and forth that distinguished senator actually talked to us about will have taken shape before we get to a stage where we have 115 days to the elections. And so even if they come today and say, we also have a component, the component of Procurement Act. Now they may say, okay, the procurement might be circumvented to give direct procurement to engagement of contractors. But you also don't control XY factors. Don't forget that we had a problem in 2015 where, because of this same situation, the horrid position, certain ballot papers could not contain, I think it was Kano State also, that was not, or Jigawa State, they didn't contain the ballot papers for them. And then we had to have, a postponement of elections in that area. So I think that, and I also understand the fact that Mr. President is trying to live up to his reputation as a man who wants to carry things done the proper way. And that is why he said, let's go to the National Assembly, let people see what this budget is all about, let people see line by line and debate it in the National Assembly. It's innovative, I agree. But the time spent doing this, the communications between the places it's supposed to be, took so much time that today we are where we are.
Okay. Okay, so, well, now, you wanted to respond to the timing.
Yeah. The budget was in the National Assembly. Mm-hmm. And at the time the budget was in the National Assembly, the budget was passed about May or thereabout, and it was assented to thereafter. Now, it was after that the budget of INEC came. If the budget of INEC had been ready, it would have been sent while the budget was still pending before the National Assembly.
That was also dependent on parts of the law.
Yes, it was also dependent on part of the law, because
the question
they couldn't know how much they are going to spend unless they know the law.
Exactly. So the question here is, if the law is key to this whole process, why did it take so long for this law to come so as to, ensure that this didn't have to wait?
I beg to differ with distinguished Senator Itaenang on this issue of using the law to do your budget projections. The reason being this: Senate passed its own version of the Electoral Act amendment since June 2017. The House of Reps was the one that passed its own in January. And that's where the controversy came in. Because as at the time the Senate passed its own version, there was no controversy. The controversy came majorly because of Section 25 that was inserted by the House of Reps, which reordered the sequence of elections and added one additional day. And that is where this whole thing came to derailment. Because by the time that controversy came about, not only reordering the sequence of election, now the presidential election had to come last, and then it has to be on a separate day. We know that will have cost implication. And I was on this platform in this studio to talk about this, that it is going to exponentially increase the budget for election should we go 3 days instead of 2. And my own position was very clear. I don't even support having 2 elections on 2 different days. I believe that Nigeria is mature enough to have all its 6 elections in 1 day. I have been privileged to observe elections in US, in Uganda, in Egypt, in Ghana, and several other African countries. And I do know, Kenya election that was held on August 8, 2017, how many elections were held on August 8? 6 elections were held on same day. Kenya is not more advanced than Nigeria. Why should we be having election over 2 Saturdays? The implication is so huge. But why I'm disagreeing with the distinguished was, okay, if that was what we were waiting for, have we gotten the law now? Have we gotten the law to now tell us precisely what exactly we will be looking at in terms of cost? We haven't gotten the law. This is still 115 days. We are still talking about today. Senate has just passed for the 4th time the amendment. If we had waited for the law, my brothers on this panel, we will not still have had the budget for 2019.
Okay, back to the phones for a moment. Let's just have this call from Nasarawa. Okay. If we can access this call from Jimo, we're calling in from Nasarawa. Can we do that? Hello, Jimo.
Yes. 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 Hello. My contribution on this matter is this. Hello? Hello, are you hearing me? Okay. Now okay. I want to say this. Oh, this is not the first time we are conducting election in Nigeria. The former president Goodluck Jonathan conducted election in 2015. It was showing the President Buhari. Where did they print the money they used to conduct the election? What is the state of the Nigerian constitution? They used to conduct the election. State of the Nigerian constitution. My advice is this. This issue has political undertones. The money is there from the executive account. Let the executive release the money to the INEC.
All right. Okay. All right. So
thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimo. Well, these are the issues you'll have to deal with because you have to put them in the proper context.
Yes. I want to say to my friend Jimo that the president of Nigeria cannot release any money to INEC unless in accordance as approved by the National Assembly. The president, even if he has the money, unless the National Assembly approves, he cannot release that money to INEC. That is why the president, his motto at all times, he discusses and he talks with me, he talks with everybody, he says, do the right thing. The president will always say, what does the law say? Comply with the law. So even if the money is in the treasury on the table of the president cannot release unless as approved by the National Assembly. One. Please let me also go to this question, but please, we're not overbothering this issue. But I just want us to know that the Independent National Electoral Commission, before you know what to do, what it will cost you, you have to know what you will have to do. Now, there was the Electoral Act 2010 and the different amendments and so on. Now, the one that was used, the amendment of 2014, introduced a few things. But the amendment that was being introduced by the latest amendment of January, which passed last year, June 2017 by the Senate and January by the House of Representatives, introduced a few more things, including the involvement of INEC in the primaries of each of the political parties at every stage. And again, you have to know how many political parties are you likely to monitor. How many do you have? Now, it will also, that will enable you to know how much will the Office of National Security Advisor need? How much will Civil Defense need? How much will police need? How much will the Minister of Interior need? How much would? It is the totality of this that enables you to ball. Now, as of January, February, INEC was able to have an idea of the law, although it still does not have the final law. So having an idea of the law at that time, it was able to put together its own need. And it was able to, INEC knew that, yes, it could have money within the period because it was going to have its own money from the statutory transfer. But INEC was also expecting that as at the time, by March, April, when we had the first submission, the law would have been ready. But when there were issues in the bill, Mr. President couldn't sign it because signing it would have been dangerous to the electoral process. It was then that INEC decided that it was important for it to throw in its budget. And that is when we had the budget. As at that time, the National Assembly was concluding all the issues it had in the 2018 budget. And it wouldn't have been advisable to throw in that budget at that time. Because even after receiving the budget goes to the Minister of Budget and National Planning, headed by Senator Udoma. And you'll have to defend most of the things you have there. It is when you are able to defend it and you be able to get head-by-head agreement, that is when it is forwarded to Mr. President to communicate to the National Assembly. All I'm trying to say here, which I have been able to say successfully, is that the executive was not in any manner tardy or in any manner delaying or responsible for any delay. And INEC on its own was not unreasonable in the timing of its preparation for the budget. And finally, it would not have been possible you know, having given out the budget and a time that we have gotten the entire global picture of our budget, now to say, look, we want to have a supplementary when we are not sure of the head of extra expenditure.
Okay, let's go to the phones again. Sani from Nasarawa, hello.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening. Go ahead.
My worry is this. Let me talk to the panelists and I enjoy your program very well most Tuesday. But my worry is that all the intellectuals we have in Nigeria who are governing this country from inception, and when issue come to national interest, you find a lot of debate over issues that ordinarily should have been debated. And on matter of budget, these are things that happen every year in this country. And whenever an issue of national interest comes in that has to do with human life, Nigerians in general, you find that all this interaction will come to different medias, giving counter and technicalities on argument on matter which ordinarily should have been. Now, when people come to media like this, either on NTA or other stations, you find out that things that would have been done ordinarily on a one straight line, but they will bring in technicalities of argument which are not necessary, that can hinder the progress of any government in power, irrespective of whichever is government that we are running. People should always give precedence to progressive matters that will bring relief to common Nigerians. That's my take for now. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Sani. Well, Senator Itainang says the executive was not responsible for any delay, neither was INEC. So where did this delay come from?
So let's unpack exactly what is happening here so that we put it into context. If you look at the law that INEC, the amendments, what the amendment sought, apart from the few inclusion, was basically to ensure that we don't have the problems of 2015, where people were going to court and challenging the legality of the use of technology, card reader and all that. And that was what the law tried to correct around there. And some other issues, amendments and here and there, that even if it has a cost component to it, would not exponentially or alter anything much. INEC had an idea of the number of registrations they were on its table. INEC has an idea what it needed to do in terms of procurement and the new exchange rate. Let me put it to distinguished senator that what happened here was that the government was caught up in its own delays of passage of budgets over time. And I will tell you why. You see, we've had this issue of budgets deterring for long. INEC's budget is a supplementary budget. So will you now present a supplementary budget to the National Assembly when the main budget itself has not been passed? Recall that supplementary budget only comes after a main budget has come out. So how do you now present a supplementary budget, which is INEC budget, when the main budget was still going back and forth between the National Assembly and the executive? So that was what kept this INEC budget in the cooler, in my understanding, because the distinguished also mentioned the fact that it's a supplementary budget and all that, and that you have to, first of all, finish with the main budget and all that. So that delay perhaps held INEC's budget within the offices of the executive, pending when the main budget was cleared, and now you can now introduce a supplementary. You can't introduce a supplementary to what? It is to an existing budget. And Mr. President was saying, and I agree totally with Mr. President, it is unwieldy to have an over 10 trillion naira budget. Because if you introduce, like Jide was saying, you introduce the annex component to the main budget, you have an over 10 trillion naira budget. And then where are you going to fund? We are borrowing from all over the world. And then Mr. President is simply saying, I don't want to borrow anymore. We already have provisions. Let us via from here and there, which is a good recommendation. But the point now is, which is why we're stuck where we are. And listening to Senator Itainang, perhaps they are finally agreed on where to move money. But most important thing is not where you move money. And that is what Jimoh was saying. He doesn't want to know where you move money. Bring the money to the table and let preparations get started. because we know that in February there will be elections.
All right, so the point of disagreement here now is you take the money from the social investment programs, and people say, no, you can't do that. The president has got 80%, as it was said in that report, of his promises to the people. The conditional cash transfer, the school feeding program. Well, and if you take that, it will suffer, because from 500 billion, you're taking about 242 billion. That may affect the gains of that project. Okay. But then the National Assembly also says, well, if you've got your programs, so do we, because we have the constituency projects, and, we have to tell the people that, yes, this is what we're doing, so we can take from there. It will affect that. Now, why should it be a situation like this?
Well, it is like this because we are dealing with environment. If we are actually dealing with supplementary budgets, we will not be faced with this challenge. Because a supplementary budget is an independent budget on its own. But when you are doing environment, you are moving from one sub-bed to another. Now, that is not in my backyard attitude of the two arms of government, is because they are facing re-election. The executive wants to have something to campaign, to say, I've been able to touch XYZ life. The National Assembly people are also going to have their own election on the same day, and they want to say, this constituency project, this road, this borehole, I was the one that facilitated
so like an earlier caller, Jimo said, there could very well be political undertones.
Of course there is, but let me also flag this, and I say this advisedly. Early in the year, we saw a scenario where the president, because it has to meet the exigency of time, from the 1 billion fund approved by the National Economic Committee to fight insecurity, the president paid that $496 million to U.S. government to buy 12 Super Tucano, and only recourse to the National Assembly for approval thereafter. That, for me, could have also been a way to address INEC's challenge. To say, okay, while we are dealing with all of this, where to source the money, we've gotten the approval, whether we want to even go and borrow that money entirely and not source it from service-wide vote or special intervention program or from constituency project. Can the president just release this fund and ensure that INEC is able to deliver on its statutory responsibility of credible election? Because the president has made this a campaign issue. Everywhere, I mean, as recently as this week, he has been telling the globe, the world, that he hoped to conduct or superintend over a better election than we had in 2015. But to match that rhetoric with action means that all that is needful for the electoral management body to deliver on his plan, because INEC has strategy plan 5 years, 2017 to 2022, and to 2021 rather. INEC has what is called election project plan. INEC has election management system. All of these are filled with milestones and timelines that they expected certain things to have been done. I'm not working for INEC. I don't know whether any of these milestones have been missed and what we can do to recover. The point is that we can't continue to cry over spilled milk. What is the way forward? The way forward is ensuring that without any further delay, the necessary monetary transfer is made to INEC to start its own procurement process. We know that public procurement act forbids you to award contract without cash backing. That is criminal. So for whatever intents and purposes, unless we are looking at possible shift in the dates of those elections, if we are going to have election as at when scheduled, the money to fund that election needs to be gotten to the election management body on time.
Otherwise, once we miss the timelines and these milestones, we may be faced with a possible shift in the days.
Or perhaps a rush. But just a moment, Senator, before you come in, let's get this call from Jeba. Oreolua calling in from Jeba. Hello. Hello, Oreolua.
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Yes.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. My contribution to this, and the way our Senate they are doing, I don't even know. Maybe they want this election to be held for the 2019.
All right. Thank you. Okay, that's it. Well, that's another Nigerian worried
I just want to
the election,
the fears of all Nigerians and possibly the fears of some of members of the panel, that there is no exigency which has not been addressed that is capable of endangering election or shifting the date of election. Now, remember that there is statutory transfer for INEC. That's number one. And so there is still money in the coffers of INEC for those things that needs procurement. Second, that much of the money that is needed are monies that will go to the security agencies and personnel for the time of the elections. And thirdly, much of the things that needed to be procured from, much of them has been secured and there is no exigency. Now, my brother Jide has said that there was a release of $496 million US. That was an emergency of an exigent nature. We have not gotten to that stage now because every time that there is Federation Account Allocation Committee meeting, the states take their money, local government take their money, the federal government takes its own money. When it takes its own money, it releases the money of the National Assembly, the money of the judiciary, releases the money of INEC and the money of NDDC and other areas. So it is not as if there is money, INEC doesn't have money. This is just operational fund for that purpose. And remember, what INEC gave us here, which is the issue now, is part of what it needs to spend in 2018 and what it needs to spend in 2019, which they thought that, look, whether the budget will be passed or not, let us have what we need in 2019. So everything that is capable of, that is possible to make election work, INEC has it, and INEC is not under any financial constraints. And if there is any financial constraints, the National Assembly is there. INEC is always meeting with the Committee on INEC, always interacting with the leadership of the National Assembly, the leadership of the executive on any matter. If we're to run into any such situation, it would have been resolved. So I want to assure Nigerians that all is well with the 2019 elections. There is nothing that is acting as a clock. The law is almost certain in the next few days, having been passed by the Senate now. It was passed by the House. It's been passed by the Senate. I think there is a little amendment which they may need to take a look at. And I believe that in the next very few days, a clean copy will be forwarded to Mr. President. Therefore, there is nothing that is at all stopping the operations of INEC. Much of the card reader machines and the other technological devices that they need for the election has been procured in the country, that in different states. The more they need can be procured easily, and they have in excess. So everything that is capable of allowing free, fair, and credible election, President Buhari has ensured that it is available and all their due funds are. Don't forget that President, in previous times, there may have been a situation where a president or the executive would have said, what you need, take. I give it to you. Minister of Finance, release. But President Buhari says, look, everything must go through the National Assembly. The National Assembly must look at every dot and every penny of it. And I can only ask it to be released or signed according as approved by the National Assembly, which is the height of transparency. Therefore, nothing is being done that is untoward, and there is nothing to be afraid of. INEC is comfortable, the executive and the legislature are comfortable, and I want Nigerians to please appreciate that at any time that the legislature and the executive are seeming to disagree on something, that it is simply saying, look, this is our Nigeria. Everybody is simply saying this is the best way to do it, and we all always meet somewhere at a conference like we've done on this INEC budget. Please, finally, on the question of supplementary, and this thing, I like your analogy, because supplementary means that I have money, extra money from some source, and I want to make an additional budget. But what the president has done is, look, we have already reached the zenith of our borrowing, of our budget for the year. We cannot expand the size of the budget, but we rather will look within the budget, via fund from one head to this other head, so that we can fund this item.
All right. We'll come back to other matters on that. But right now, we'll take a short break. Stay with us at NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered, and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. Now, Federal Ministry of Information and Culture bring on this message.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. We started the segment by bringing you the views of the citizens. We took the cameras out. Let's get to hear what they have to say about it.
I think it's also important that the election shouldn't always be a one-day thing. If you add technology into it, we can have the government conduct election over a period of time, say 2 weeks, you will spend less, and you also have a transparent process free of acrimony, because everybody will see the process in a dashboard, the vote coming in. Could be an electronic voting system where people can sit perhaps in their office, at their homes, and just vote for whoever they choose to vote, and get the same results. And that will be more transparent, because all the actors will be watching the flashboard to see how the votes are coming in.
We want to conduct an election for them to use 242 billion streamlined to 143 billion is outrageous. For me, we can simply conduct an election from our phone, which will not cost Nigeria more than 2 billion to 3 billion. And simple, we elect president, we elect senators. And
if anything we are doing, you have to compare what is happening in other places. Maybe that just money they are going to spend, maybe they have compared with other countries with the amount they spend. But what I'm looking towards is that, you know, in Nigeria we operate analog. We are not grow into digital. Maybe by the time we grow into digital, maybe the money will be coming down. The spending for INEC will be coming down. That's what I...
Even though that they will give the INEC, or the INEC will give the corpers or the security the money, but it shouldn't be such amounts of money that might be used in the poor masses to sustain.
Possibility they should increase the money so that the election will be free. Lack of money, lack of funds cause some kind of I can say when there is not much money in the electoral process, there will be some kind of lapses in the process. So funding much is going to improve the credibility of the election of the country.
All right, the views of Nigerians there. But back to the studio here and the issues at stake. Well, the senior special assistant to the president says no cause for alarm. Everything is on course. He doesn't think there really is a rush. Well, you don't seem to agree with that.
I don't seem to agree. If everything is okay, everything has been provided for, then what was the basis of even going to the National Assembly in the first instance to ask for approval? Look, listen,
we are within time. The timelines are being met.
Listen, let us not confuse the 45 billion naira that was released, the statutory release for INEC for election preparations fund. No, that is not. And I'm saying because we now have opportunity, we never had the opportunity of knowing INEC budget proposals for elections, but for the first time, with the cooperation of the National Assembly, the INEC leadership, and I understand that the INEC leadership insisted on Nigerians knowing its budget for elections, and the president agreed. We now know that in the defense of the budget in the National Assembly, that there were line components, which in fact trended in the media. People were asking questions, why do you need this so amount to do this? And INEC defended it at the committee level. So, in defending those things, how do we now say that these things have already been provided for when these things were being defended? There was procurement for the electronic electronic transmission tablets, which INEC is introducing, because now INEC wants to introduce electronic technology to the transmission of results. There are components of the ballot papers, which has to be printed. They're all sensitive materials. None has been procured, and they are all in this budget we're talking about. So the issue of saying INEC has money, INEC's money, 45 billion, is for its yearly operations outside of, you know, the 2019 elections.
All I'm saying is that where we are now, we've not gotten to the kind of crisis that they say president should release money outside the budget. So maybe where we are now is that we are within the week.
Get into an agreement.
Yeah, within the week, there will be
they understand it is
and all will be
all right,
well.
Let's go back to the phones. We have calling in from Enugu Badmos. Hello. Hello?
I'm Mr. Bartholomew from Enugu.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I wish to first of all commend distinguished Senator Etainan, because people like him, when I hear him speak, I noticed that he's competent in his job. The issue of election, budget, and law that we're talking about is something that if we remove politics, because we shouldn't be politicizing these things that are so much important. The senators we elected are people that are supposed to represent us. And issues like this, they are supposed to be the people that will make laws. So we know that we're having elections 4 years. And these are things that we should start preparing for it the moment an election is over. The year of that election, when people are elected into the National Assembly. We are talking about a constituency a project, which in most cases we don't even see them in most constituencies. So we elect these people to make laws, not to come and execute projects. So when issues of national importance comes up like this, they should keep aside the politics or selfish interests and see how they can do things that can affect the life of the ordinary Nigerian positively and also move this our country forward.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Badmus.
I heard him well, and I think I just want to correct one impression that Badmus seems to have. He says that you elect the senators and the members of the House of Representatives to come and make laws, not to come and execute projects. Well, Mr. Badmus, my brother, the senators make laws and state even the budget is a law. They state what project will be executed in many areas. And when these projects are executed, these projects are not executed by the members themselves. They are executed by the different ministries. The members simply choose projects. You know, even when you see your senator, your member of the House of Representatives, come to give motorcycle or sewing machine and all those things, those are provided in the budget which Mr. President assents to. And money is, those things are procured and they come to give to you. They don't procure those things. And even when they put a road will be executed either by the Minister of Agriculture, if it's a rural road in there for agricultural purposes, giving access, or it is a major road. So they don't. But thank you for the kind compliment. And I want all Nigerians to appreciate that the legislature is an arm of government that is to make laws and to decide what the executive is to do. They do not go to execute those things.
All right, so let's now come back to where we started off first. And this is just for the public to know. The question of environment. Whose responsibility is it to say, look, this is where you take, this is the side where you take from and put there? Is it the executive? Is it the legislature?
It is the, we started having that problem in 2002 when I think, I may not be correct in the year, about the year, but I think Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was the Minister of Finance at that time. And when we passed the budget in 2002, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala went and she took some projects, took some funds, and funded some projects, moved some funds from some heads and funded some projects. And I remember that when she appeared before us, I was in the House of Representatives then, I confronted her that this is a matter that could send somebody to prison. Now, at that time, we did not have in the provision, in the Act, provision that regulated environment. It was after that that we now, in the subsequent budget, we now said in the Act that where a provision or where a need arises for environment in the budget, the environment shall not be undertaken other than as approved by the National Assembly. That is when we now took the power and we now said in the act itself, and the president signed, that you cannot vie money from one head of a project to another. I remember effectively it was in hearing room 1 in the House of Representatives. It arose as a very serious matter. So violence is a matter between the executive and the legislature. The executive, when it needs money, it will suggest where you would take the money from and what it has become necessary to fund. But as it arises in this case, when we have submitted and said, take from this head, the legislature is saying, look, okay, we want to take, because we don't want to increase the size of the budget, but we don't want to take from this head, which is why we now had a liaison meeting and we have some understanding.
Why I'm going there is because some people have said there is a loose end here and you might continue to have issues like this even in the future. So why not tidy it up? You say suggest was the word you used. So if, except I'm mistaken, it would seem that yes, the executive can suggest, but the legislature has the final say. Is that it?
So, yeah, that's the position. That's the position. And distinguished Senator Itainang is being very sincere.
Right.
But the truth is, this is not a normal suggestion, and it's not a normal process. We're in an election year. They request the suggestion from the National Assembly, I mean from the executive, is at the heart of what we have all agreed is a campaign issue for those who are going for election. It's also at the heart of the campaign issue for the executive. Now, if everybody stick to their guns, we will not move forward. There needs to be a negotiated settlement,
which we have.
Because
and,
if that has been reached,
yes, we've reached that.
Thank God they've reached that.
Yes.
But we are saying that this could have been reached much earlier, and it also serves a
the National Assembly was on vacation.
Yes, which is actually the more reason why I am of the opinion, and I disagreed with my learned brother and distinguished senator about having to wait for the law for you to have a cost estimate for the election. But having said that, I think there are a number of things we can use this opportunity to also enlighten the public, because I've seen a lot of mischief makers talking about why does INEC need 189 billion, you know, in the last enterprise they spent less than 100 billion. What is responsible for the exponential increase? And what people refuse or did not advance their mind to are a number of factors. What is the size of Nigeria's voting population in 2015? 68 million. Today we have 84 million.
Okay.
2, INEC is conducting simultaneously election into 6 area councils. And there are about 68 positions to vie for. And it is a cost-saving measure, because now you are going to use the same personnel, the same, you know, you don't have to create an extra day to have these area council elections. It's also the first time that is happening. Again, what's the exchange rate in 2015 and what's the exchange rate now? We know the value of Nigerian currency in 2015 and what it is now. Also, how many political parties did we have that contested 2015 elections? About 26. Today we have 91. And having 91 means you have to observe 91 party primaries.
Conventions,
congresses. So exponentially, you have a lot more. The commission used 500,000 ad hoc staff in 2015. It's looking at hiring 1 million ad hoc staff for 2019. So all of these have cost component, which is why I took a personal opinion, a personal position that, look, we don't even, I mean, the idea that was made by being nursed by National Assembly to add 1 extra day to conduct 2019 election was a no-no.
it will have even exponentially increased the cost by additional 30%.
Okay, let's see if we can get this call from Delta. Shaba. Hello, 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 hello. Is Shaba still on the line? All right, I think we should just move ahead. Right. So here we are, and fears have been expressed, but Senator Itayenang says there's no cause for alarm. But again, we say, how can we, moving forward, how can we prevent a situation like this? Because knowing the way the country works, it would not be, you know, those who say this may play out again and again, there ought to be a way that you can insulate the system from issues like this. How do you?
I think the way we should get this done is to work that towards the 2023 election, we take at least some figure of what we had today. We look at the number of political parties. We look at the law as it is. There may not be substantial change at that time. And in doing a statutory transfer for INEC at that time, we increase it to at least 50%, by at least 50%. If we need 242 now, we can do 121 in addition to what they are statutorily entitled, so that they have, in addition, in advance, what they will need before we come to take the details in the annual budget. So that, and that statutory transfer for that year will only be for that year for the purpose of increasing their operational budget and making them not so. But then they will have to defend the details of that before the National Assembly in time. And I think going forward, the processes that President Buhari has laid in place, you know, it will be very enduring, very sustaining, because Nigerians are now debating every aspect of it. Every Nigerian now is an election expert, is a finance expert. Every Nigerian is a legal expert. Every Nigerian is an expert in technology, you know, because President Buhari has made it so transparent that everybody can discuss it, discuss him, discuss even any amount, because he says it is your money. Therefore, having gotten to this level of transparency, Nigerians have confidence. So if INEC says this is what it wants, it gives it to the executive. As Mr. President is laying the budget on the table of the National Assembly, it would have, in the statutory transfer in 2022, have put in that one at least 50%, knowing that that is a given while the other details are being worked out.
All right.
I think we may still run into this kind of problem again. Not because the election management body would deter. Because if we take what Senator Itayenang says as gospel, then Nigeria is the only country I know that changes its election law every 4 years. And we're going to have another, because the political actors will come back from the field.
Yes.
They will notice certain loopholes or lacuna that they think they need to plug to safeguard their own interest, and they will propose new laws. And to the extent that you're proposing new laws, the INEC does not need to understand, you know, what rules will be playing by. And the costs. With this rule entail you bringing certain other things that you need to procure. And that's where I align myself slightly with Senator. What my point of disagreement is that the new laws did not have, you know, extraneous components that needed INEC to prepare so much. However, because we always change our laws every 4 years or amend them, so you now have as 2010 as amended, we will come to the point where in 2019 and then leading to 2023 we need to amend our laws, and we need to, and don't forget that INEC is gradually shifting towards the last component of full electronic voting. Right now, people may not know, but out of the first steps you need to say we are now engaged in electronic voting, INEC is already doing 3. The voters register is electronic. The card reader, you know, accreditation is electronic. now for the first time ever in the history of Nigeria, transmission will be done electronically. And it is also in the component in the budget where they have made provision for tablets to purchase to transmit elections. So the issue of elections we are missing or the manipulated result during collation is not going to be a problem this time. Now the last step is now for Nigerians to vote electronically. So as you are voting, and INEC is saying that by 2023, all things being equal, we are going to do. If that is the case, you will need to procure those machines for balloting. But I wish and I hope that we do not go through this journey anymore, because it makes the whole process look so uncertain. And in elections, what you want to avoid is uncertainty.
All right, Gideon, how do we?
For me, we can. I mean, I like the very ingenious proposal from distinguished Senator Itaena about, having maybe 30–50% increase. Take into consideration inflation, inflationary rate, and of course, again, like Dr. Chima said, we may not 100% be able to forestall. For instance, now we don't know how many political parties we will have in 2023, because at the rate, I mean, do you know that over 124 applications were submitted to INEC, out of which it just registered additional 23 recently to make 91. So maybe in 2023 we'll be talking of 250 political parties, and then of course people will continue to register under the continuous voter registration exercise, and the cost will. But what I am pushing for is value for money. Can we, even if we have to spend 200 billion or 500 billion for election, can we have that value for money? And value for money for me is not only limited to making sure that cost of the materials are not inflated, and but in terms of even the credibility of the elections, because that is what we pain an average Nigerian more, that we spend so much, and at the end of the day we have a disputed election. We have an election that is deemed not to be credible. We have a violent rigging elections. We have a election of the highest bidder, which is why the commission is trying to do everything humanly possible to eliminate this issue of vote buying that has almost become a bazaar that is, manning our electoral process. Because at the end of the day, people will say, okay, so if Siri doesn't have billions, he cannot be a senator in his state. So how do we go from there that people of ideas, people, layman like me, can aspire and become governor without having a deep pocket or looking up to a godfather? So that is the value for money I think we should be pushing for, irrespective of how much we spend to conduct our elections. That will ultimately be what people will latch on to say, okay, in truth, we have value for money. Not necessarily in terms of corruption or financial inducement or corruption in terms of who makes money out of the electoral process. So for me, a number of things cannot be held down because of the law itself, like the issue of registration of political parties, issue of registration of voters, issue of several other variables that are not constant, that you have to deal with.
Well, Senator Itaena, can Nigerians rest assured that this is not going to be another face-off between the two arms? Are you so optimistic that in a matter of hours, the understandings will produce an agreement?
Yes, sir. I want to say that, yes, Nigerians can be rest assured. And again, please let me just relate to one issue that he said about that the elections we may have more than 200 political parties in the next election or something. I think by the next election, we will have about 20 political parties. Because if the proposal in the bill now that is to be forwarded to Mr. President, because I've seen that area was not altered, becomes law. If you do not have a certain number of seats in the House of Assembly election, the National Assembly election or something, then you cease to become a political party.
Yes, but more would register after that, of
more
course.
will be registered, but then there is a provision that those cannot come again. So we will be having at least 10, 15 political parties. That will determine the cost of the election. It will drastically reduce, because some people just go to register political parties to wait for those who will be angry in one and loser in one, so that they come to take the ticket of the political party.
But that's the reality currently,
yes.
isn't it?
Yeah. So at that time, you will not. And of course, a lot of people went to register political parties because there was this rumor that political parties will be funded. So register this political as a commercial venture. But be that, I give them all the respect. Now, I want Nigerians to be rest assured that the present administration has promised Nigerians credible elections. And every step that is necessary to get that realized is being taken and is being fulfilled. In terms of funding, in terms of the independence, in terms of the process of constituting the members, in terms of the process of appointing the national commissioners, the resident electoral commissioners, all the processes are put in place. So Nigerians can rest assured. Now, there are two things that are pending before the National Assembly now, which Mr. President, we are expecting that it will be ready for Mr. President's consideration. First is this budget, the environment. Having gotten into these diplomatic diplomatic shuttle, which we're undertaking by both sides. Diplomatic understanding. Diplomatic understanding. We've sat on the table, and it was a round table, so nobody. It was a round table.
Not like tango.
Yes, it was a round table. We've agreed on. We've had an understanding, which the leadership is gradually passing, and from indications we have this evening before I came, and interaction with the honorable members and distinguished senators and their spirit of patriotism, we will arrive at something which will be in the desk of Mr. President within the week on the environment. Then also, because the National Assembly members are likely to proceed on oversight to look at the extent of spending and what the spending are on and the extent of implementation of the budget, they will also want that to be on the desk of Mr. President before they leave or immediately they leave, because immediately they leave, the rest becomes between the clerk to the National Assembly and my office transmitting. Therefore, Nigerians can rest assured that all is well and everything about 2019 election is going to be certain. Let Nigerians also be rest assured that President Buhari will not allow anything that is untoward, indecent, or that is not right to take place at all.
You share this optimism?
Yeah, cautious optimism. Cautious optimism because I think that the members of the National Assembly are desirous of having an election. I also think that the president is desirous of having an election. And so nobody will want to be a cog in the wheel of having this election. I think the INEC itself is ready. I think it's projected that we're going to have this situation. So given the engagements that we've had with INEC seems to be on top of his game. For all the milestones he said he's going to achieve, about 14 of them, INEC has conclusively done 12. By the end of this whole process, it will be inching towards the last two. And everything is going on, smoothly. We expect that this is the time now the executive should now begin to do some in-house stock taking. Look, the problems with the election since 2015 has never been about the lack of, abilities of INEC to adjust to realities. INEC has incrementally continued to improve. For every time an election is conducted, INEC looks at loopholes where it has not done well and corrects it. But that seems not to be the case with the political actors.
Right.
And it's worrying because distinguished senator has talked about the president wanting a free and fair election, wanting to, make sure that the people he puts in the INEC are people of noble character. But the question we're asking is this: what is Mr. President doing about the infamous roles of security agencies in elections? And we cannot shy away from that. The problem we're having right now in elections is no longer INEC. Before now, INEC was a problem, the big problem, where you were still queuing up to vote, to vote. INEC has already announced election. It's not happening anymore. Before now, we have processes where the card readers were manual and manipulated, but now you have card readers and you have PVCs that seems to beat all the rigging systems. But we have a situation where security agencies have simply not understood that this is a new Nigeria where things need to be done differently. What has been happening, the role of the security agencies in the last couple of elections is very, very, because I don't want to use I want to say it leaves very much to be desired. And then we'll not to talk to Nigerians. The new craze of selling your votes, where we're not talking about vote buying, and the way Nigerians are willing to market their franchise. As an election observer, you go to the streets 2 days before elections, people are beckoning on you to tell you they want to sell, and this is also dangerous to the polity. And so at this point in time, I want to ask the president, what have you put in place, especially on the part of security, to see that even those who sell their votes and those who buy the votes are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law? And then what have you put in place to ensure that when security agencies do that which is not expected in accordance with our laws, that they are brought to book? If the security agencies don't step up to the plate, I am sorry, the credibility that Jide talked about, we will not achieve it, even if INEC does everything according to the books.
All right, these are the components that they're key to having the kinds of elections that many Nigerians would desire. But before Senator Itai responds to that, I want you to look at that very important segment that he has just talked about. Not just the security agencies, but the people themselves. This is all for the benefit of Nigerians. But you tend to wonder about the ingenious ways people have developed to beat the system and buy votes and sell votes.
Yeah, again, it brings to fore the argument those of us who work in the area of elections will always tell people that election is not an event, it's a process. And it's a process that involves more than one critical stakeholders. INEC may do its level best to say we want to deliver credible elections. But without the security agencies, as we have seen, not only in Osun, not only in recent elections, even in Edo, where it said it received intelligence and for that reason elections should be postponed. Even when INEC wanted to go ahead, they said, well, you are on your own. If you decide to go ahead and anything happens, we are not there. And INEC had to postpone for about 2 weeks. In 2015, we saw what happened. For the election had to be postponed for 6 weeks, allegedly because they said, issue of Boko Haram, they need to recover lost grants and of course, distribution of PVCs. But beyond and above that, he has mentioned the security agencies. He has also mentioned the voters or the electorate. What about the media? What about the media? We can't, INEC alone cannot do it. We have on our hands now, private media, we know the ownership structure. They are politically exposed persons. And they are stoking the embers of discord. And I don't know what National Broadcasting Commission is doing to sanction effectively that all those who engage in all this fake, dissemination of results or fake news or propaganda or demonization of opponents, that they are sanctioned. Because we do not currently have a conflict-sensitive reportage by the media. Everybody just publish what they like. I mean, people have criminalized social media and say, oh, people do. But even traditional media, you and I know, even take all the private media enterprise in Nigeria, which one does not have some political affiliations in terms of ownership? And even the public media, the kind of, breathing down the neck, that we see in public owned media. These are critical issues that we need to take on board. Of course, for me, the greatest warning goes to the political elite. Because if they don't want credible election, there is no other thing you can do that they will allow to succeed. They always want to be a step ahead to who buys the vote, who sells the, we know voters sell. because we have made poverty an article of faith. But who does the buying? It is the political, the contestants, the parties that will send out agents and say, have this money. We saw those who are caught in Ekiti and those who are caught in Osun with bulk of money being shared out to voters to buy their vote. If they don't behave themselves, if the political contestants don't behave themselves, there is no amount of sermonization we can do. They are the one. The house cleaning must start from the politicians, professional politicians, contestants, candidates. As we start campaigns on November 18, at least for the National Assembly and presidential elections, we want to see an issue-based campaigns, because that's what can help the voters to make an informed choice. But scenario where you have all manner of campaign being demonization of opponents, libelous statements, inflammatory comments, and all of these shenanigans that we see playing out at campaigns. At best, they will invite musicians and they will dance, and the next thing they start calling each other or one another names. That is not the kind of campaign we want to see towards 2019. We want to see an issue-based campaign. What are you going to do in terms of reducing poverty, unemployment, reducing inflation, human development index? I mean, how do we address the issue of corruption? How do we address the issue of insecurity? Those are the kind of things Nigerians want to hear. And the political class that are at the forefront in terms of campaigning must make this the main issue, the main drivers of their campaign. Otherwise, we will not get there. Credibility will still be a suspect. And what we don't want is to have a throwback to 2007, where there was even the winner of that election himself admitted that, look, the process that brought me was a flawed process. So we have a lot of work to do. All the critical, including my constituency, the civil society, we are all complicit. We know what happens. You know, we have fake observer groups now. Right. We have so many people who will go to politicians, collect money, and come out and start them, legitimizing disputed elections that is clear to everybody that was stage managed. So these are the issues that we need to. It's a multi-stakeholder thing for us to have credible elections.
And you represent the political class and the political elite, really.
Yes.
So
I want to say that I'm glad at the level of exposition by the panelists and their concern. And I want to also say that in all these concerns, none have they pointed to President Buhari and the federal government. In fact, what we're trying to do as much as possible now is to do everything to make sure that INEC has its own money and its budget, and then the law that allows them conduct election is certain and assented to, and it becomes law, so that we will not have any cause to talk about INEC and election again.
Well,
we'll only be talking about
controlled by the executive. Huh?
Yeah, but we'll only be talking about ourselves as candidates, the president as candidate, the candidates of APC as candidates in governorship and all that, and how we're going to win the elections, and marketing our credentials, marketing our achievements, marketing our policies, and marketing the credentials of our candidates. So we don't want to be talking about the process and the election management body. Now, I agree with the concerns raised about certain things, but about the security agencies, I have not been able to personally point to what has been said has been done, because all I heard about the Osun election, the Ekiti election, and far back ago, the Edo election, was that the security agencies played their roles well, and those that were suspected not to play their roles well were made to face the law. And again, that part of what we're doing now is to make sure that the security agencies do not have need or cause to relate with the government of the states for funds, because that is where sometimes they get compromised, the sitting government. So that is where sometimes they get into problem. That is why when you see the way President Buhari has laid out the budget, he states what INEC will have, what Office of National Security Advisor will have for the elections, what the police will have, what SSS will have, DSS will have, and what each of them will have, so that they have their own money without having to take instructions or funding from some other person. Now, there is about selling votes and buying votes. Something dangerous is happening, and I'm calling on INEC and the security agencies to come in. In Akwa Ibom State, for instance, I talk about my state. You see a situation where there are contractors who go around collecting the PVC, the numbers on the permanent voters card. They simply say, text it to me and collect money. When you text it to them, they'll give you either 2,000, that is now, it's going on. You text it to a particular number, they give you either 1 or 2, 3,000 for texting their number, which means that something is wrong. And I want the Independent National Electoral Commission to come into this, because they should be, because I understand they want to use it and on front load in advance. I'm sorry that I'm saying this, but if it were not, if I weren't certain, it has happened, and it is happening, and it's in Akwa Ibom State, it is something that is worrisome, that there is somewhere they want to upload in advance and find a way to hack into a particular system and somehow, and it's happening in many other states. I've heard it in many other states. And before the few of the elections that happened in the last 2 states, I wouldn't be specific now, although it can be inferred, this kind of thing was also alleged. So it should be made to happen. Let me also talk about the media. I want the media to please come up. And I want the National Broadcasting Commission to come in. I had called some days ago to visit the National Broadcasting Commission because of the kind of things that are being sent out in the media. And above all, the kind of things that the state-controlled media is doing. If a state is controlled by the APC, it will start with the governor and the deputy governor is not involved though. It will start with everything about the governor. The next one will be the governor's wife. After that, it will be the Commissioner for Information. And nothing about any other political party. If it is a PDP controlled state, it will start with the governor. Next will be the governor's wife. And the next will be the Commissioner for Information. So they are not allowing great messages to be sent. Exactly. And they are not allowing the other political party to participate in disseminating its information in those medium of the state. So if you are bound and forced to go to private media organizations to buy airtime and sell your messages. The National Broadcasting Commission should intervene in this matter so that the citizenry, the voters, will have an opportunity of measuring reasonably whom it should vote for. And it should give the candidates opportunity to go out and sell themselves. If you are a legislator, say what you will do. If you are going for governor, say what you will do. If you are a party, say what your party manifesto is. And I would urge Nigerians, please, don't sell your vote. And those who are collecting or preserving money, some state governments are just, some states and some officers are preserving money to buy votes on that day. Well, and they are not executing projects. They say on that day we will bring money. Please let us go out and execute projects. Okay. Allegations. Those things are allegations.
Allegations, and most times they are driven by the politicians.
Yes, they are driven by the politicians.
Right.
The allegations.
I think the distinguished senator just said something that we need to correct on air immediately. Please, Nigerians, take this. There is nothing like preloading, front-loading.
No, that is what they're...
Please, I want to make this very clear. Because it's all over the social media and some other places. And people, the INEC processes is such that no matter... See, let me tell you, there is a new order where there is nothing an INEC officer can do for any politician.
Yeah.
And because that is the case, you have some members, or fifth columnists in the system who go about deceiving politicians that, oh, we will do this. It is no longer possible. And the reason is because that machine, once you put it, it can only start by 8 a.m. on that day. And by a particular time, 3 o'clock, it goes down. And the moment you come, you query it. The moment is like, let me explain what you mean by a query. If you go into a filling station and I buy fuel, if you want the GD wants to buy fuel and he doesn't ask the attendant to clear it up, then there's a problem. So when agents say please query it, everything goes to ground zero. Nothing happens. Secondly, We have a situation right now in the INEC processes where the days of saying we have 2 million registered voters and we, like it happened in Rivers State some years ago, and people 1.9 million people voted. That means nobody died. Nobody decided not to vote. Everybody came out. It cannot happen anymore.
Have voted for only one person.
Because these days now, and that is why you see why, if these things is, the so-called preloading, it was possible. Why are politicians now buying votes? Because they know that the only way to get vote is to approach the and pay. See, the INEC of 2018. It's not the INEC of 2003. I'll assure Nigerians that the processes that have been put in place to safeguard your votes is in place. Yeah. Go out and vote. Now, that does not mean that politicians will not try all kinds of gimmick. Yes. They will ask you, maybe they want to confirm that you have a PVC. Yes. That's why they're asking you for your PVC number to confirm. Because these people too, they don't want, it's an investment. But do not have any fear that the process will be compromised.
I suppose we'll have to leave this discussion here. Yes. And
I want to join you and affirm that to Nigerians. Don't go selling your vote or texting your number to any other person.
So, as I always say, no one program can take care of all the issues, and we must leave this conversation at this point. And say a big thank you to our guests, Senator Itai Nang, Senior Special Assistant to the President on National Assembly Matters, Senate. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Chima Amadi, Executive Director, Independent Service Delivery Monitoring Group. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And Jide Ojo, always a pleasure to listen to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for the honor. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, too, for being part of this program. Next week, we'll reach you again on NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
long ago, a judge, ridiculed me in her court. Not too long ago. I can't say this is what exactly I have done to this judge, a female judge, to deserve what she did to me. But I am comfortable so long as, look, any life that is not useful to other people is a useless life.
You have a pro bono workshop. This is what you, as a DG Legal Aid Council, have done several years. But how does it complement your job?
Thank you very much. I'm very fulfilled and happy that today Nigeria, at last, the mindset is changing to complement the state actors. Definitely, government cannot do it all. With the capacity of human and finance, cannot allow us to take up the pro bono for Nigeria as a very big country with almost 200 million as their population. And therefore, I am happy today that what the legal aid has been hammering on, trying to get Nigerian lawyers to participate in, is becoming a reality. Little drops of water forms an ocean. It is not there yet. The workshop is taking on 3 states. Lagos State has taken on a big one through the office of the former Attorney General, who is now our Vice President, Professor Oshibanjo, who is very passionate and actually articulated the clearinghouse a long time ago. We have the clearinghouse. We don't need to define it here. It's the marketplace. You know the needs and the gaps, those who need help and the lawyers who are ready to give them help. And I'm happy there's a component of training. You do not go into such things without having the proper training behind. No matter how your degree is in the law school, you need to be trained in the technicality of giving legal aid. And this is what the legal aid is all about. And finally, I'm very happy that for those donor agencies, international development partners, we can now beat our chest and say the justice sector is finally being coordinated. We are working hand in hand for the better good of Nigeria.
Now, if the Director General of the Nigerian Law School is at a function, you expect that he is there to pick knowledge that would impact on students of law. And so at the pro bono workshop, we have the Director General of the Nigerian Law School,